Honda had pulled out, they couldn't develop the car. Obviously winning the first championship was really, really nice. 8 in a row was amazing. And what happened to Lewis in Abu Dhabi in 21, that one just still burns in a lot of people. It's the challenge now of getting back to win. It's a different feeling when you're chasing and you got on pole by nothing. And I jumped up and the cat clawed the crap out of my legs. That emotion, you don't get anywhere else. The importance of manufacturing is much higher than it ever was before. It takes years and years and years to build a team, but you can lose it very quickly. I've worked in quite a lot of places, but never with a team like this.
Rob, thank you again for joining us
My
today.
Pleasure.
I think to get the ball going, I would absolutely love to know how you came to be at Mercedes.
Well, it's a bit of a story. I've been in Formula One for 18 years now. I never set off my career to be in Formula One. Didn't even watch it, to be honest. It's just happened as I've sort of migrated through. Previously, I worked in the automotive business. I worked in the oil business. I worked in aerospace. And it was only when I had a phone call when I was working for GK Aerospace. We've got an interesting opportunity. Do you fancy a chat? Yeah, okay. And they said, well, we've got a job in Formula One. Okay, I didn't know much about it, but it sounded really interesting. So I joined. It wasn't here, it was Mercedes on the engine side. We have a sister company called High Performance Powertrain, which is about 35, 40 miles away. And I joined them in 2005 as the sort of quality and then operations director. And I spent 5 years there. And then I got a call from Ross Brawn when he was here and said, do you fancy coming doing a bit down in Brackley? I said, okay, that sounds challenging again. So I came here in 2010 and I've been here ever since.
Stunning. So you mentioned having been with Mercedes since 2010. Throughout this time, what have been some of your own career milestones that you've seen happen within the business?
Gosh, it's a lot. I mean, for many years, it started as BAR and then went to Honda and really underperformed as a Formula One team. And Honda sort of pulled out 2008, 2009, and the management team bought the company. Became Brawn. Ross Brawn, who was the team principal, did a management buyout in 2009. And they actually had a brilliant car. So Honda pulled out when they just developed a brilliant car. And lucky for them. But they pulled out and I was up the road in the engine place and they called us up to say, Honda are going, can you give us an engine, please? And we had to try and stick a Mercedes engine in the back of this Brawn car with no time at all at the start of the 2009 season. And because Honda had pulled out, there was no money, so they couldn't develop the car. And they let 40% of the team go. But the car was really quick. So they actually won the World Championship in 2009 with no money and with 40% of the people gone. So I turned up in 2010 to a team that was really quite fractured because, say, they had no money. Mercedes had just stepped in to help them, but 40% of the people gone. The team was about 400 people, not less than that. There was no real structure. There was no real organization. So it was, can you come along and make sense of that? And that's what I tried to do. So when I came in 2010, it was the basics of putting in an organization that made sense. People knew who their bosses were. And we started to build up the sort of whole company from that point. And the 2010 season was really hard. 11 was hard, but slightly better. 12 was slightly better. 13, we won some races and we won the championship in 2014. So it was a story of building up, people joining, like Toto Wolff joined in 2013, I think it was. And the team grew and grew and grew to what it was. And then we won 8 years in a row. So highlights for me were really getting the structure in place, building the team, getting the first win was really nice. Obviously winning the first championship was really, really nice. Winning 8 in a row was amazing, absolutely amazing. It's the challenge now of getting back to winning. That's what motivates everybody. Because it's a funny thing, when you're winning every year, you're always being chased. And there's the pressure from being, can you win it again? Can you win it again? Can you win it again? And knowing that one day you'll lose. And we did in 2021. And it's like, we've lost. But it's a different feeling when you're chasing, when you know who your target is, and every day you come in and say, we've got to get to it. It's a different motivation, and that's quite exciting. And that motivates the whole team.
I love that. I love it. We'll talk about the challenges from the season as well, but I'd love to know from your perspective, in the time that you've been at Mercedes, what have been some of the biggest changes that you've seen happen to the car?
Oh, to the car, crikey. There's been plenty. Probably the biggest change from when I came initially was in 2014 with a new power unit, because it was a brand new power unit that was developed up the road at my old haunting ground in Brixworth, and that was such a change. And we were very fortunate. They developed a brilliant power unit that absolutely smashed everybody out of the water. So we could turn up to a race. If we qualified last, we'd win. We just that much in front of people. So that helped us to get that success in the first few years. And as the teams improved and the chassis became more and more important, there's been plenty of changes through that year, but each time was a motivation for us. Can we win over a regulation change? Because teams don't do that. And we did it, and we did it, and we did it. But I think the biggest change recently has been the change in 2021 and the cars as they are today. These ground effect cars, they're much bigger with bigger wheels, and it's brought a set of performance characteristics to the car that we hadn't seen before, and we didn't preempt. And if you watch the race of the Tour, you probably saw the cars were all bouncing around last year. There was lots of bouncing. And we took a long time to get on top of that. And we even see it now. In the race last weekend in Spa, the car was bouncing again. So you're always on the edge of this. And so it's a phenomenon we understand a lot better now, but it's still not to the level that we're happy with. So that's the battle we've got, compared to Red Bull, for example, who have nailed it very quickly in 21 and now have got a pretty dominant car. So yeah, we've got a lot to do.
You mentioned some of the regulations, and obviously the cost cap has been further reduced. How has that impacted manufacturing at Mercedes?
Yeah, the cost cap is probably the one single biggest thing that's impacted us since I've been here. We knew it was coming. It wasn't new to us. But initially it was coming down to a level that was painful, but not really painful. And then the pandemic came, and in the middle of the pandemic, the other teams lobbied to reduce it even further. And then it was really eye-watering. For a company like us, it was big reduction. So we've had to reassess how we operate. There was a couple of paths we could have taken. We could have just resized the company to the cost cap, which would have been painful, but in a way simpler, because it would have meant just shrinking the workforce. But it took so many years to build up the team we have today that we didn't want to do that. We wanted to maintain our capability. So we do that by doing what we call non-F1 work. Because F1 is quite seasonal, and through the winter it's just flat out on the new car. And then during the season you do a number of upgrades, so it's slightly more controlled. Still really busy, but not quite as busy. So you can put your whole team onto the car in the winter, and then you can move people out to do non-F1, and that way you can balance the cost cap. And that's what we've done. So what it's brought to us is probably a level of efficiency we never had. Now in manufacturing, they were always pretty efficient, because manufacturing people generally are. That's kind of how they're wired. They try to do things that way. But I think the importance of manufacturing and utilization is much higher than it ever was before. We used to be, and still are to a degree, all about speed of getting the ideas from the wind tunnel, which is over there, all the way through design to manufacturing onto the car. That is performance for us. The quicker we do that, the quicker the car goes. So it was all about availability in manufacturing. So a good idea comes along. I've got a design. I want a machine now to make it. So that's not that efficient, really, because you could have machines kind of sat there waiting for this eureka moment. The cost caps come along, and you have to rethink that a little bit. You can't afford to have machines sat there so idle. So you've got to keep them busy, but still somehow be able to react to the good idea that comes through. So manufacturing has had to really sort of say sharpen up, get more attuned to what's the outside world doing, and benchmark themselves against competition, and just be really, really driven on how do we keep that sort of speed but bring innovation in and maintain quality. It's been quite a good challenge for them. I'm sure they've loved it.
From your perspective, what would you say is the one aspect that the Mercedes-AMG PETRONAS car really just outshines in?
The car itself? Today, not much, because we're not that successful. I mean, it's a good all-round car, and it's improving. One thing we're pretty good at is our development rate. You may have seen at the start of the season we were probably at the fourth or fifth quickest team, being beaten embarrassingly by Aston Martin, who used the whole back of our car and our engine and all sorts of other things. But I think our development rate's been quite strong, and now arguably we're maybe the second or third quickest team. So our development rate is good. I think we have a good power unit. I think that's really strong. And overall, it's because our benchmark is so high, because we've had lots of success. We're very critical ourselves, but the car is okay in my opinion. I think it's pretty strong. But again, the benchmark is Red Bull, and you look at them and you think we've got a lot to do.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about the Brackley Site, and the business recently announced new plans to set in renovations, multiple new buildings, create a kind of modern style campus. What will be included in this development?
Well, this program has been going for about 4 years, to be honest with you. And we started off in the building that you're actually in. So I don't know if you had a chance to walk around, but all of manufacturing, all of the build areas have all been completely refurbished in the last 4 or 5 years. And they look quite nice. And the guys have just walked around. They're sort of nice and shiny, and they're good. But it sets a standard, and that's what we want to maintain. But what we found is the team's grown. The team is 1,200 plus people now. This site was initially designed for about 400. And what we find is that the restaurant's too small, the gym's too small. You can't find anywhere to park. You may have experienced that. It's all too busy out there. So the next phase for us really is to actually start looking more about the well-being of the people. So we're going to build a building just out here where this car park is. So we're going to get rid of all the cars off-site, build a new car park over the way there. And there's going to be a new sort of well-being building. So a new gym, a new restaurant, meeting areas. Because really it's about creativity. So people work long hours here, they work hard. So you want to create somewhere where people want to come to work. And when they're here, they can actually interact and think through things and generate new ideas. So that's the thing we're going to start building next year. And then at the front of the site, there's a car park as well. Everywhere's car parks, you may have seen that. That's going to be a new sort of marketing commercial building. So right at the front of the site, hopefully be quite impressive. And what that will do, that the floor below us is full of engineers, but all of the commercial and finance areas. So we're going to boot them all out. They can go to the front of the site, and we'll create a better space for the engineers, because it's a nice area, you'll see, but we want to create, again, more breakout space for people so they can actually, let's say, think and come up with these ideas for us. So when we're finished, hopefully it will be a really nice campus area where, let's say, the cars are gone, that people can meet. It's full of sports people. They're all very competitive around here. So they all go running and cycling and stuff like this. So create somewhere where it really attracts these sort of people and just makes a team strong.
Yeah, it sounds like the upgrades are kind of built with the intention of uplifting company culture. Yeah. How would you describe what it's like to work at Mercedes?
It's something we work hard on. So I've worked at quite a few places and never seen anything quite like it, to be honest with you. It's when I first came, it's always been a friendly company, but it never had anything that you define as what are our values, what are our behaviors, these sort of things weren't defined. And some of the things that we built in those first few years is trying to define that culture. What actually is it? And that's been really helpful. We've got it all written down. Everybody knows what they are. It's called pride, passion, respect, innovation, determination, excellence are the five key values. And we recruit people on the back of it. And if people don't perform, that's what they get marked against. And so when I first came, there was a number of people here who were brilliant at what they did, really technically brilliant. But to be honest, their behaviors were pretty awful. They were last minute heroes that come out when everything was going wrong and they'd save the day and then you never see them again. But it was kind of, we can't afford to do anything about it. And by bringing this in, we made sure that, it wasn't a sort of fireman culture, but we made sure that people here had the shared values and beliefs. And what you see in the place is a lot of very driven people, but tons of teamwork, lots of support, and loads of humility in the place. Nobody's too big for themselves, because if they do, they just get knocked down with humour. We take the mick out of them all the time, and that's the end of that. It just puts a stop to it. But it makes a really nice place to work. We kill any hierarchy, we kill status. And some of that because it's more fun to work in, but also it's important that people can think they could raise ideas and they'll be listened to. So any barriers to communication, we try to get rid of and make sure that anybody can talk to anybody with the right respect and everything, of course. But it makes a pretty energizing environment to be in, because it's quite hard. You kind of flippantly say we're trying to be the best in the world. Kind of are in what we do. So everything has to be right. Everybody in every part of the company has to do their bit and really contribute. And something that we've really driven into the place is this sort of constant dissatisfaction with the way things are. This sort of continuous improvement, whatever you want to call it, that sort of mindset that we didn't used to have. It used to be you work really hard in the winter and you almost kill yourself and you recover in the summer. And you rinse and repeat, kind of keep doing that. And you never get a chance to actually improve. And what we've really put into people is you've got to improve. You just got to, because it moves so fast, this sport. So everybody's kind of got that into them, which kind of puts that pressure on you. And if you're not careful, you forget to actually enjoy when you win, because you constantly look into the next thing. So the balance is important, and enjoy the successes because they can go away quickly. So yeah, that's what it's like.
You mentioned how you are working to create a culture where there isn't this sort of hierarchy in order for everyone to feel heard. But do you feel like the leadership team still holds a higher expectation of themselves? Is there that sort of ethos as you guys are kind of carrying the pressure of the team?
Yeah. I think the leadership team feels it more than most. I can't say that. But obviously the buck stops with the leadership team. And we're lucky we've got a very experienced group that's been through a lot together, and you can't buy experience. You just can't buy it. And so the fact that we've had this success, and you may have all seen what happened to Lewis in Abu Dhabi in 21. I mean that still burns in a lot of people. That's the injustice of that moment. It's really painful. But I think the leadership team is extremely motivated to put things right, and where we're fortunate, we have great support from the shareholders, like the investment that we're doing into the site, and they know it's a long-term game. Again, that's the nice thing about it. It takes years and years and years to build a team, but you can lose it very quickly. So there's great support, but you don't need to motivate anybody in this team. Everybody feels it, no matter what. So you walk in there on a Monday morning, and you haven't got to have watched the race. You'll know just how people are feeling, because it'll be, if we've done well, then there'll be a happy mood, and if not, then people will be a bit down. But they're pretty resilient. They rebuild themselves quickly, and they'll go again. But that's what it's all in tune to the race. It's like having a normal company. It's a year end every 2 weeks. And probably in your game, when you do your magazines, probably you wait eagerly for what you get back. It's a bit like we get direct feedback, and I'm very fortunate to be in this. It's a sport, and your whole family gets grabbed by it, and all your friends get grabbed by it. So, if something goes wrong on a Sunday, you get all sorts of messages. What happened? I don't know. I'm sat on the sofa like you are. So I don't know, but they expect you to know straight away. But it's nothing quite like it as a job. So I would say we are very lucky to be in it.
You mentioned that the season's been challenging. We're in the middle of it, but I'd love to know, how far ahead do you start thinking about changes that could be made for next season?
Oh, way ahead, because you're at that point in the year where you're trying to balance resource between this year's car and next year's car. So next year's car would have been working on before we even ran this car. So, at the start of this year, there's a concept group that as soon as we start on the current car, they move on to the next one. So you always got that rolling sort of cycle. And it's always a juggle. And the cost cap brings that extra pressure on that to balancing your resource between them both. But, you have to look that far ahead. And if you're in the sort of luxurious position, maybe where Red Bull are today, you can sort of move people over a lot sooner, because you think, I've got enough in the tank maybe to win the championship, so I'm going to develop the current car very much. I can move my resource onto the following year's car. And that's where it's kind of hard to catch up now, because you can't throw the weight of people at it because of the cost cap. But you just got to be smart. But yeah, we do look quite a long way into the future, because you kind of have to with things like this.
I wonder if, so I'm sure as you've spoken about how hard the team works, when it comes to seeing performance setbacks, I'm sure that has a toll of some level of demotivation. When you kind of head into the winter season, how do you as a leader work to just refresh and re-energize and remotivate your team?
Yeah, it's again, it's not as hard as you think. You do, it depends where you sit in the organization. When you have like a DNF and the car hits the wall or something, everybody sinks. It's one of those moments on the TV. You're like, crikey. And then manufacturing guys straight away will think about, that's a lot of bits broken. Got to make some more bits quick. That's their mindset too. How quick can I get those parts back? Are they? So as soon as it happened, Sunday straight away, Sunday afternoon after the race, there'd be a lot of phone calls and stuff going on, photographs flying backwards and forwards. How quick can that come back? Can you stick it in that person's suitcase so we can get it? And so you go into practical mode very quickly into what we can do. And that generates pace and people that haven't got time to think about how crap that was. But the new car is always an interesting time because you go into what we call the build, which is the winter, and everybody knows it's going to be long hours. So no matter where you are in manufacturing anywhere, you're sort of into 6 days a week and long hours and through the dark winter. And what you generally find though is the excitement builds as you go through it, because people then, first of all, it starts in design and they design it, and then it comes to manufacturing or purchasing. And then you start seeing bits of new car appearing around the place. And that gets people talking, and they start thinking, and all these experts are looking and go, that looks quite quick. What does that mean? But yeah, it's as it builds towards individual bits, built into sub-assemblies, into major assemblies, and then you build the car up for the first time and you fire it up, which is always a big thing. So we make quite big events of the key milestones. So the fire up of the car is always a big milestone that the whole company goes to, and it gets published, and then the first test. So doing all these steps helps people to know where they are. Otherwise, it's just a long slog for 6 months of work. But we communicate very regularly with people on the program. And as I say, the excitement builds towards what's it going to be like. And then all the gossip starts. What do you think the other teams are doing? And of course, you've got no idea, but it's just natural until you get to the first proper test when you start getting indication of where you are. So say resilience is key for this game because there's lots of punches in the stomach along the way. But the good bits make it. I mean, it's on Saturday when, is it Saturday? I lose track. Well, Lewis was on pole, wasn't he? On pole? I get lost with the races. I should remember because I remember sat at home watching that with this cat on my lap, one of the road cats from Romania, and with my wife and daughter. And it was quite unexpected, and he did a great lap and got on pole by nothing. And I jumped up, and the cat clawed the crap out of my legs, thinking what the hell's going on, and flew across the room. But that emotion, you don't get anywhere else. The cat hasn't forgiven me since, but that is something that we all live for. Those sort of moments of just pure elation of actually, we've done it, and you do a little tiny part of being your part is small in the whole thing, but you feel part of it. You probably felt the same. It was just a great moment, wasn't it? Yeah, you didn't have the cat. I can lend you one if you want. Yeah, I won't show you the scars. I've got a few stuff. But it's moments like that the whole team sort of lives for, and it's a bit like a drug. It's once you've had a few of them, you want more, and you just keep going, and you just keep going. So it's great.
With that, from what you've shared as well about how hard the team works, when the season comes to its end, is there a message you want to share with the team about the efforts that they've put into?
Yeah, I mean, the team is something special. So I've worked in quite a lot of places, but never was a team like this. The commitment, the drive, the energy that they put in is second to none. And I think we've had some ups and some downs this year, but we're on the right path. I think that's the sort of real message, and we've shown over the years we just keep going, doing the right things, supporting each other, showing the teamwork. We'll kind of get there. So it's no, it is a massive thank you for all the efforts, and let's just keep going, because when we do get there again, oh my God, it's going to be brilliant.
Love it. I love it. I have a couple of fan questions I'd love to throw at you real quick. As COO, I'm sure your role is more to do with oversight and managing. When you look at the departments that bring the car together, if there was one department where you could really get your hands dirty with, which one would it be?
Oh, I'd go back to my roots. I love manufacturing. I did an apprenticeship when I was 16, and it was on machines. And as I've sort of progressed, I moved further and further away from that sort of doing improvements on things. So yeah, I'd probably rubbish at it. If I did it now, they'd probably say, "What? Get out! Just kick me out because I just get in the way." But that's what I used to enjoy sort of doing, and it's hard to get very little chance. And you'll speak to Dan Burton in a minute. He's the operations director. And if he thought I was going to go play with his machine, he'd go pale. He bans me from there sometimes to get in the way. But that's what I enjoy doing. But I get very little time to do it.
Is there anyone that you look up to as a leader?
I'm not going to say Toto, because he'd expect me to, and he'll tell me if I didn't. Who do I look up to as a leader? I've looked up to plenty. I've had some great sort of mentors through my career. I mean, the one guy from sport who I've always admired, and it's a bit random this, but was Richie McCaw. He was the All Blacks captain. Because I watched him all through when I was kind of growing up and stuff. Rugby's my number one sport, not Formula 1. Rugby's always been my number one sport. And how he played the game and how he led it was, I think, really impressive. Because interestingly, Ineos, one of our sponsors some of the All Blacks. And last week, or week before, we had a session with their leadership team, and they were talking about the All Blacks culture and values and stuff. And there was a lot of parallels with our team, and the sort of humbleness and the sort of how down to earth they were, and the sort of just the very simple messages. You can see it in them, and I like to think you can see it in some of the things we do. Maybe not as good, but the similarities were there. And when I watched him play, and when I saw him lead the team and win the World Cups, I thought, yeah, that's a guy that I would follow, definitely, and shows characteristics which you can only aspire towards, really. So probably him.
My final question. What is the one aspect that you absolutely love about your job?
But apart from the people I work with, which is everything, really, it's constantly changing. The variety is, say, previously I'd stayed in jobs for probably 4 years, 5 at the very most. But I've been here 13 years. I can't believe it. It goes so quick. Because everything is always changing. And that, no 2 days are the same. And that's a bit cliched, but it's true. There's always something going on. And that keeps you really fresh. And with that sort of motivation, the hunger we have to get back to winning again is, say, you just don't get it in other normal jobs. So people number one, but also the sort of mission that we're on to get back to winning is, yeah, it burns in us all.
Rob, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. This podcast is brought to you by Fine Right Media. Inspiring Industry is written and hosted by Danielle Champ. Our sound engineer and videographer is Gavin Mitchell. Sam G joined us on the photography front. Lee Polero is our creative lead, and he's joined by Jamie Alvin, our graphics designer. Joan Jeffrey was our booking manager, and Rosie Clegg and Sarah Rudge are our digital marketing executives. Finally, we'd like to extend a special thanks to the Mercedes-AMG PETRONAS F1 Team, especially Adam McDade, Rob Thomas, Graham Miller, Gordon Kelly and Darren Burton for taking the time to collaborate with us on this project. The views, information and opinions expressed during this episode are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Fine Right Media and its team.